And we turn now to one of the top Democrats on the Armed Services Committee, Rhode Island Senator Jack Reed. He is in Providence this morning. Let's talk first about what's going on in Iraq. Senator Reed, the Pentagon says that these airstrikes so far, they have had some effect. They've destroyed some things. But what are you being told about whether these strikes are being successful? What do you think's been accomplished so far?
Well, what's been accomplished is we've been able to destroy some heavy artillery that ISIS has that is threatening Kurdish forces. We've also been able to disrupt their lines of communication, some of the convoys. And the basic strategy is targeted strikes on these weapon systems so that the Peshmerga, the Kurdish forces, can strengthen and resist and ultimately roll back ISIS. And I think these targeted strikes are very effective. The Kurds are very aggressive. With this support, I think they will be able to stabilize the situation in the north.
And we want to apologize to our viewers. There is a sound delay between the time my voice gets to Senator Reed and then gets back here to Washington. But Senator, let me ask you this. A senior administration official told the New York Times today that, and this is a quote, this is not an authorization of a broad-based counter-terrorism campaign. Why would the administration say that? Why did they mean that? What do they mean by that?
Well, there's two dimensions. There's two dimensions at work here. First is protecting American interests in the region, and we have personnel in Erbil, Kurdistan. We have to protect them. We have to protect not only our personnel in the region, we also have to protect for any type of operations that might go outside of the region into the United States or any place across the globe. That is why we will target some of these terrorists wherever they are, in Yemen, in Iraq, etc. But the second dimension is political, and that is making sure that the Iraqi government reorganizes itself so it can successfully use all the resources that it has, and it has significant resources, to stabilize the situation and then begin with Iraqi forces to push back on ISIS. What has happened, unfortunately, is Prime Minister Maliki has politicized the military and militarized the politics of Iraq over the last several years. That has to be reversed. And while the Iraqis are trying to put their house in order, literally, and resume the fight, we can provide some limited support to deter, particularly up in Kurdistan, ISIS. But ultimately, this has to be a political strategy that takes place in Baghdad, not in Washington.
Yesterday, I want to show you a clip of something the president said as he left for his vacation. When he was asked if he had any second thoughts about pulling U.S. troops out of Iraq, here's part of what his response was.
What I just find interesting is the degree to which this issue keeps on coming up, as if this was my decision.
And those words were hardly out of the president's mouth when we started getting calls from Republicans who said, hey, wait a minute. Back in 2011, President Obama was taking credit for pulling those troops out of Iraq and was saying that he was fulfilling his campaign promise. Do you see any connection, Senator, between the pulling out of the American troops there and what has happened in Iraq since then?
Well, first thing I think you have to recognize that the invasion of Iraq back in 2003 was, I think, a strategic miscalculation. And at the time, I opposed it because I didn't think in the long run it would contribute to long-term security. In fact, it would have long-term and detrimental consequences. We're living with those consequences today. And in 2008, it was President George W. Bush and Prime Minister Maliki who agreed that all American forces would leave Iraq in 2011. Now, some people have said, well, President Obama could have negotiated around that in the intervening years. But once President Bush and President Maliki had declared that our forces, all of them, would be out, it was very difficult, although President Obama tried to have a remaining force there, training, equipping, along the lines of what we're proposing in Afghanistan. But I think once that decision was made in 2008, our troops were leaving in 2011. Has it contributed to the situation here? I think what's contributed significantly to the situation has not been our presence or lack of presence, it's been the politics of Maliki. His alienation of the Sunni community, his politicization of the military. The collapse at Mosul was not a result of lack of equipment or lack of personnel. It was leadership collapse. And so in order to put the situation right, we have to begin at the fundamental core, which is leadership in Baghdad, Iraqi leadership, which will work together in a unified way to defend and protect their country and defeat ISIS.
All right. Senator, thank you so much for joining us this morning.